for once, Steve had a good idea and said, "Hey, you should do the trilogy, the Living Dead trilogy." I'm like, "Oh, that's a good idea, Steve. Shut the up." But
With White Zombie is very interesting.
yes, yes. Well, I watched White Zombie the other night. I wasn't really with it, but I've watched it before, so I
Right.
remembered it at least.
There you go. There you
I was
go.
kind of tired when I watched it. I'm like, what's happening? Bela Lugosi's making the creepy hand thing that
Yeah, that's what was that? It's a gang sign, right?
I think so.
What's a gang sign?
In the 30s, it might have been.
It was a
Yin and
gang
yang.
sign.
So let's see.
So what are
Well,
we
let's look at the
doing?
description just for fun.
Sure, why not?
A young man turns to a witch doctor to lure a woman he loves away from her fiance, but instead turns into a zombie slave. Well, that just gave away everything,
Yeah, that was the film.
basically.
You know, I I I almost I have a story
Already?
that I want to start with a story.
It's story time with Mick. It's story time with Mick. Mick Strawn is the best. He is gonna blow your mind. Story time with Mick. Story time with Mick.
When I was in New Zealand working on Hercules, the thing that we were trying to do is we were trying to do a lot of what you would call pure practical effects and in-camera opticals. The idea, the concept of in-camera opticals, and we did some really wacky stuff. But one of the things that we did, there are a lot of examples of in this film. There was a lot of they look like glass mats, and they're either glass mats or foreground miniatures. It's hard to tell which, but literally we did this thing where we had like distant villages, and I will never forget that. We had this maybe a 50-year-old New Zealand, and he was he never really finished in president. And it was just great because he would be talking to you. What we would do is we would set up a camera and set up a monitor so that the monitor is tied to the camera, and then and these have to be on really long lenses with a lot of light. And one thing that New Zealand has definitely got is it's got a lot of light, man. And so here would be the camera. Here's the camera. Here's this plane. Let's say there was one particular instance where we were inside of the cone of a extinct volcano, and it was just all grass all the way around, but it had this bowl effect, and we're on one side of it shooting over at the other. And I said, well, what I want is I want a village in between the camera and up against the side. You know, these guys live in this whole tribe lives in a village, and so he sits here and he's got a pipe, and he would say, well, you know, the thing is, it doesn't really matter the color, because the color is just it's the tone of the film, the tone of the background, so that we never escape that we're within the same tonal range, because distance is what creates the distance creates more of a tonal range than actually, as you get to something, you can pick out the colors with your eye, but otherwise and all
Right.
the time he is just bull, just constant, blah, 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 blah. but as he's he's just taking like, well, I could put a little blue in here, put a little red back over here, and as long as I'm fudging and next thing you know, there's a village on the there's like little huts on the hillside, and so what we would do is then we would take his painting, we would leave the camera up, and then I would sit back and talk to people on walkie-talkies, or actually cell phones back there. By the way, in New Zealand, they didn't have like a competing infrastructure for cell phones. They only had one company, right? And this was
really
new. This was a long time ago. And the thing is they only had one company, and everybody went cellular with this one company. And because of that, there was no competing frequencies. There was no, literally the sound of somebody on the phone sounded like they were standing next to you. And so,
well, they kind of were, weren't they? It's a small place.
yeah. You have to remember, New Zealand is as long as California.
Right.
So take out the phone, and then they would tape off like where the huts are, wherever anything was painted, or they would give an entrance. So somebody could go in a hut, and then they had to come back to the same spot, come out the door and go in the door. But they had to know where the door was, and they had to not move anything because it wouldn't move. So it was great up against the hillside, and so him created like all these villages and castles, and we did it like several times. We did villages and we did castles, and we did and we also did hanging miniatures, and the hanging miniatures were a trip, because if you put a hanging miniature in between, like we're coming up into Prometheus's lair, and the hanging miniature of Prometheus's lair is stone, and you shoot it on stone, and then we create like the gateway or like the door of it, which is like this 16-foot monster with rough stone around the door, and we only, altogether that door and everything is maybe 12 feet wide. And then we just put that opening inside of a miniature, which is the castle of Prometheus, which is just these jutting, stones, and it looks like the mountain is carved away with little windows and stuff like that. And as you were walking towards it, then you would bring the actors like Hercules and Hercules' bitch. Walking towards when they're walking towards the castle, you had them right up against basically the opening that's in the miniature reveals the flat that you have with the doors, and this is all stretched over like maybe a football field, right? So maybe the miniature is maybe 20 feet in front of the camera, and then the doors are like 80 feet further, long ways. And so then they start out next to you, and when they're next to you, as long as they are bigger than the miniature in regards to the camera, then it looks like they're right there, right? Then they get up and they get walking, and as they get smaller and smaller and smaller, they're in between. By the way, they are in between the miniature and the doors, right? So when you can see them, and they just look like you just see parts of them, you don't see all of them. And then all of a sudden, when you can see all of them, boom, the illusion becomes real, and all of a sudden, your brain puts you like 100 feet forward.
Wow.
And I swear, everybody that looked at it did the same thing. Is whenever anybody was up there to watch it, we would we would put a grip behind them to catch them because they would go, wow, whoa.
Wow.
It was absolutely impossible not to have that. No matter how many people you had, even if you were looking at it on a monitor, it did the same thing to you. You go, wow. It was really cool. I loved messing with effects that were totally in the camera, So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyway, back to what were we talking about? Oh yeah, the thing I was tying this into was how many times we saw them in these huge castles, in that huge castle at the end, right?
What were some of those the sets that we'd seen before, like in Frankenstein and Dracula and?
Yeah, but the thing is it wasn't quite completely that. It's I mean maybe the staircases, parts of the staircases were
more depth, right?
But here's the thing that you notice is that if you had put the Dracula staircase in that castle, it would have been tiny because that castle was enormous.
And some of the shots outside were definitely more.
And some of the and the shots outside, definitely that shot outside was a hanging miniature,
right?
But cool use of those. I mean, cool use of the hanging miniature and stuff, and very classic in-camera stuff. The thing that I have to say for that is this is the cool thing is probably for the most part when they were looking in the camera lens on the set, those hanging miniatures already gave you that feeling of how big you were, right?
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah,
well, I know Hercules used a lot of tricks with the camera, right?
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Hercules was we were doing a lot of
making people big and making people small.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of the definition of special effects is anything that moves or anything that's harder than it should be or softer than it should be.
Right.
Yeah.
Brown Space Films.
Oh, speaking of that, on this film, White Zombie, I noticed that in the credits, a huge portion of them were under art and technical.
Yes. Well, that's what I was saying is there was so much, and I guess the film really impressed me. And first of all, it was super creepy.
Yeah, it was. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it really was.
Lugosi's creepy.
The Lugosi is so creepy in it, but also things like that hillside in the dark with the crosses on it.
Yeah,
it's just kind of cool. I mean, I really like that they put that all on a hillside, so you all had it all right there. And think of it this way: think that there was a certain dynamic going on. See, when I think of White Zombie, and the thing is for the longest time I thought of White Zombie as being a low budget film, but then when I looked at it, I go, well, they certainly did a huge job of scope on it, because I mean, I don't think I don't think it was actually a low budget film. I mean, because the graveyard was enormous. The castles, the way that they dealt with the castles and stuff and their foreground miniatures and the sets were so cool. I like the fact that they had to go past the water.
Oh yeah.
To get in. And wasn't that a strange little bit of architecture?
Very weird.
Yeah, just go back through. Let's just go back around this way.
The water, yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah, let's go.
Kind of went under the castle almost, didn't it?
Under the castle, and then you came out in this room that was the size of the Astrodome. Right? You go.
Right. Well, I felt like this was Dracula's cousin Dracula was out of town and his cousin came, and he was playing around in the castle, hypnotizing people.
It left it.
Because there were a lot of things that were a lot like Dracula on this.
There was, yes.
And I felt like I was watching Frankenstein in some spots because the set looked so familiar. I'm like,
right. Well, especially in that black and white, and the fact that The aspect of the sets, though, James Whale, who did the Frankenstein and Frankenstein.
I know what you're. I can't remember. yeah, Bride. I think he did Bride.
But he also did the Invisible Man, and his effect was his design effect was a little bit everything sloping and angular, and this was a little bit more head on and just enormous. Well,
this was a guy that did he didn't do a lot of horror movie, but Victor Halperin,
right? Him and his brother, right? His brother was director, and
well, he was the director, but on this one,
and the producer was his brother.
Okay, yeah, I think I don't see the producer on it, but yeah, I think he was. What's weird is there's a movie later on called Revolt of the Zombies, which is interesting because I thought the term zombies didn't exist until Dawn of the Dead.
No. Zombies is being directly related to the mysticism of the Caribbean.
Oh, okay.
It is really old. I mean, zombies were the creatures that you got to work for you that were dead and they were cheap.
So it's like working on vengeance. The thing I'm thinking though is like you really can't say this. So there's two different types of zombie movies, really. So there's this type of zombie movie where people are just entranced by voodoo, and then they can snap out of it if something happens. But there's the other one, which is the George Romero version, which is the people die, come back to life, and then they eat people.
It's a good question as to whether I mean, these zombies didn't seem to quite have as much in common with the other zombies other than the way that they moved.
Well, and also I'm like, she came back at the end.
Right.
Because the guy died.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, so you see the
like how I gave it all away. It's 1932 or whatever. Who cares?
In voodoo, the thing is in voodoo, I think I'm trying to think of how in voodoo zombies are not dead. The undead are not dead. They actually are put under not a spell or under a poison. Right.
Yeah.
And these kind of zombies are those poison zombies.
Yeah.
They're not the ones that they're not of the and the thing is I think that these are your higher end zombies.
Right.
They're not as likely to lose a limb just for no reason.
They're clumsy though. Which this makes that sugar mill scene a lot more disturbing, knowing that the people weren't really dead. The guy that falls in.
The guy that falls in. Yeah, right.
And the crunching sounds. That was really disturbing. I actually really liked that scene.
That was pretty good. That was one that I kind of like stopped and turned, because there is something about the film that just glossed right over that.
Yeah. Right? He just kind of looked at it like, oh God, that's creepy. Let's go somewhere else.
Yeah. It wasn't commented on by anybody.
No.
And I guess the fact that there wasn't anybody there to comment on it, because everybody was, a zombie, is pretty indicative of the zombie mentality.
Yes, but so I'm thinking about all the times we said George Romero created the zombies. I think he did, but it was a different reality.
Yeah, different reality.
This is an alternative reality back in the 30s.
Right. Well, like
which had a voodoo in it.
You know what? The thing is this. I think that if we bring it up to modern day, we have to. These are Nordstroms zombies. These are not these are your boutique zombies. They're basically reusable. I think that we could go as far as to call them green zombies. Now, I think the George Romero zombies, dollar store zombies.
Maybe JCPenney. I mean, give him a little credit. Which we'll get to that later next week.
Well,
probably.
I don't know. Depends on who's got the gun now, don't you think?
Oh, I can't wait to talk about Dawn of the Dead, which we're going to review next week.
Dawn of the Dead. There you go. That's right.
No, I really enjoyed this. I don't have much to say about it other than like.
Yeah, I did too.
It's a classic film.
Here it is.
I don't like it as much as Dracula.
I've heard. Oh yeah. Well,
or Frankenstein.
The thing is I don't think that it had is focused a point of view as Dracula did.
Yeah.
In a way, what we had is we had a four-way lead, and didn't you kind of like have a little bit of trouble from time to time telling the two guys from each other,
yes.
Right?
Well, it's also an ensemble cast, and like the only decent actor was Bela Lugosi, really.
Right, and the rest of them were just like throwing themselves all over. And I might add is there was something now. How much longer was this? Let's see, Dracula was 39, right?
Actually, wasn't it 31? I thought that was before this one.
It was 31. It was before this one?
Yeah.
Wow, really? It's because the weird thing about it is this one didn't have a good feel for its own dialogue,
Right, yeah. I had the same problem too, the dialogue.
It almost had a feel. There was a certain extent it had a feeling like it was a silent movie, that like they didn't know what to do without cue cards.
Well, at least Bela Lugosi didn't have a high-pitched voice or anything.
Yeah, well,
Well, did you notice his French accent too, by the way? Did he speak French?
No, I don't think that he did.
I just thought he was, I don't know, it's weird how his accent changed, and it was French. Like, I think he was, anyway.
Well, here's the thing. He had a very strong accent, and it was his first few films here in America, he did phonetically. Because it wasn't as much of an accent that's the language that he knew.
Yeah.
Right. So he literally learned his lines phonetically.
Yeah. Well, we saw him in a movie later, like in the 40s. I don't think his voice was as good as it was.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's something about there's that odd richness in barely being able to understand him.
Right. Well, it's kind of like doing a podcast with you. I might have been talking about me not making any sense.
Yeah, there you go.
Either way, it works. So I don't know. I don't have much more to say. It's like I thought this was solid. I would say everybody has to see this.
I really did. I really did enjoy it. It is far superior film to what I thought it was going to be. And way darker and creepier than I thought it was going to be. Although, I mean, it is called White Zombie. So
I did like the end where they, the guy falls off the ledge and he before he hits the water.
That's right.
And just the way the dummy hit the water too was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was like, it was like, ooh. Ouch. Yeah.
And then how fast she came back. She's like,
and by the way, and here's a good question is, why did he jump? Why did he's the guy that pushed Lugosi, right?
Right.
And then he jumps after Lugosi. What was that all about? I mean, I swear I almost stopped it and almost went back to go, were they tied to each other or something?
I think he couldn't live without the woman of his dreams, and he knew that.
Oh, what? That's a good bitches. It's always the bitches.
I know, they ruined everything.
Hello.
Oh boy.
Political correctness right out the window there.
For a second, but we're back. I used to have a dog who looked like that. It was a Jack Russell mix.
Yeah, this is a Jack Russell Chihuahua.
Awesome.
Yeah. His name's Toby. He replaces the other Toby that died just before we moved.
Can't have too many Tobys.
You can't. Listen, how dumb can we be as human beings that we originally named him Wolf? I named him Wolf, right?
Right.
And Wolf would have been a great name for a little dog like this. But the thing is he looks just like Toby. He acts just like Toby, and we just couldn't call him anything but Toby. You know, it was like, wow, that is so sad. So it's our Toby replacement.
It happens. So what?
Poor Wolf.
That kind of reminds me of when I used to date. Like I would date two girls with the same name, so it didn't matter. Like if I called them the wrong name. Anyway, moving on. What would you rate this?
You know what? For what it is, I enjoyed it immensely. I'm gonna go with 3.5. I'm right there.
Yeah, actually, I really like it. I agree with Rob Zombie. I think it's one of the best ones. It's not my favorite, but it's
Rob
up there.
Zombie likes this one.
Yeah, that's actually why he named his first band White Zombie.
Really?
Yeah, because he loved this film so much. He used to come on the Howard Stern show and talk about it, the White Zombie. It came up in conversation more than it should have, I think. But the movie.
There is one thing about it that I thought it was getting silly until I realized that they were actually using it as an affectation. You got a match? Yeah. How many times did they use that?
Right. Yeah.
It's like Dracula going. You got a match? See right there. The fact that like everybody's trying to get a match in something. It was like probably one of the things that kind of took me out of it more than anything else.
Well, I liked that the woman was a better actress when she was zombified. Which happens. I did like that big zombie, the big guy. He was awesome.
Oh, he was. I thought some of the zombies were pretty amazing looking. I like Preacher Zombie. I like the fact that the zombies were more nailed their own particular characters than anybody else. It's almost like everybody should have walked around with a little tag on that said, I'm following the vat of goo zombie.
A little variety never hurt, though.
A little variety never hurt anybody.
Which you didn't have in Night of the Living Dead. All the zombies are pretty much the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah. We'll talk.
Yep.
We'll talk.
We'll talk.
We'll talk.